Keanu Reeves walked into the Silver Haven, a big and beautiful hotel in New York City. Outside, the storm raged, rain pouring down in heavy sheets. He pulled his black hoodie over his head, his jeans damp from the wet streets. In one hand he carried an old duffel bag worn out from years of use. He looked like any other traveler, tired, quiet, just wanting a warm place to rest. No cameras flashed, no bodyguards followed. No one even noticed him, and that was exactly what he wanted. But something strange happened. "I'm sorry, sir," said the woman at the front desk with a polite but firm smile. "We can't give you a room tonight." Keanu blinked, confused. "No empty rooms?" he asked. The woman hesitated, glancing at her computer screen as if checking something. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "It's not about that. It's hotel policy." Hotel policy? That didn't make sense. Keanu owned this hotel. He had spent millions making Silver Haven a place where all kinds of people could feel welcome, where no one was turned away without a good reason. And yet, here he was being told he couldn't stay. He took a slow breath, staying calm. "Can you explain the policy to me?" The woman looked uncomfortable, shifting in her chair. I'm not really supposed to say." Keanu's heart pounded. Something was wrong. He could sense it in the way the staff avoided his gaze, the way the Tommy near the entrance nervously adjusted his uniform. It wasn't just a rule, it was something more. He leaned in slightly, his voice gentle but firm. "Please, I'd really appreciate it if you told me the truth." The woman sighed, her fingers tapping against the counter. Finally, she whispered, "There's a very important guest here. A VIP. And they don't want certain types of people staying in the hotel while they're here." Keanu's stomach twisted. Certain types of people? The woman bit her lip, her eyes darting toward the security guard by the door. "Yes, sir. People who don't look wealthy." For the first time in years, Keanu felt his hands clench into fists. He had never flaunted his wealth, never acted like he was better than anyone else. And now, in his own hotel, people who looked like him, tired, ordinary, just needing a place to rest, were being turned away. He glanced around the lobby. The chandeliers shimmered above, casting a golden glow on the expensive marble floors. Guests in fancy suits and dresses sipped expensive cocktails at the grand bar. Outside, in the cold rain, someone just like him, someone without expensive clothes, without the right look, might have been told to leave. His mind raced. Who made this rule? Who was this VIP that had so much power over the hotel? And more importantly, what was Keanu going to do about it? The warmth of the Grand Hotel suddenly felt suffocating. He had built this place to be different, to be kind, to be a home for everyone. Yet now the people running it didn't even know who he was. His voice was calm, but there was a quiet storm behind it. "Who is the VIP?" The woman's fingers trembled as she shuffled the papers in front of her. I can't say, sir." Keanu nodded slowly, then turned to scan the room. He saw them immediately. A small group of elegantly dressed guests stood near the grand piano, their laughter soft but deliberate. The kind of laughter that made it clear they were in their own world, a world that didn't welcome outsiders. A tall man in a dark suit leaned in to whisper something to a woman in a red dress. She glanced toward the front desk, her lips curling in faint disapproval as her gaze flickered over Keanu. Then, just as quickly, she turned back to her glass of wine, uninterested. Keanu's pulse quickened. These were the people he had spent his life avoiding. The ones who let money make them cold, who saw others as less important simply because they didn't have expensive suits or designer bags. And suddenly, a painful memory surfaced. He was 17 again. Standing outside a fancy restaurant in Toronto, freezing in the falling snow. He had saved up for weeks to take his mother to dinner for her birthday. But when they arrived, the man at the door had taken one look at their old coats and politely suggested they go somewhere else. That night, his mother had simply smiled, squeezed his hand and said, "We'll find a better place, baby." But Keanu had seen it, the way her eyes had dimmed, the way she had held back the hurt. And now in his own hotel he felt that same quiet ache. He turned back to the front desk. His voice was soft but firm. "I need a name." The woman swallowed hard. "Sir, please don't ask me that. Please." She hesitated, then glanced over her shoulder before leaning in. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Mr. Holloway." Keanu's heart clenched. He knew that name. Victor Holloway. A billionaire real estate mogul. Ruthless. Connected. The kind of man who bought luxury hotels just to tear them down and build something bigger. Flashy. Cool. The kind of man Keanu had spent his whole life trying not to be. And now Holloway was here, treating Keanu's hotel like his own personal kingdom. Keanu exhaled slowly. "I'd like to book a room." The woman's eyes widened. But sir? I can pay. He pulled out his wallet and placed his credit card on the counter. Give me any room. The smallest one you have. The woman hesitated, looking toward the security guard. Then, after a long moment, she slid the card through the reader. It beeped. Proved. She quickly handed him a key card, whispering, Room 214. Keanu took it, his fingers curling around the smooth plastic. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the elevator. This wasn't over. The elevator doors slid shut, enclosing Keanu in a quiet, golden glow. The hum of the hotel faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Room 214. A small, ordinary room. One of the cheapest in a hotel filled with luxury. As the elevator climbed, memories flickered in his mind. Years of traveling alone, sleeping in rundown motels, learning how little a bed and a roof really meant when your soul carried a weight heavier than any suitcase. The doors opened. A long, dimly lit hallway stretched before him. Plush carpeting muted his footsteps as he walked past sleek, numbered doors. His fingers tightened around the key card. He had built this place to be different. To be a home for all, not just the privileged few. Yet tonight, he was just another traveler turned away at the door. He slid the key card in. A soft beep. The door clicked open. The room was small but clean. A single window overlooked the city, its lights flickering against the dark sky. The bed, neatly made, looked untouched. Keanu Reeves stepped inside. This wasn't over. He dropped his big bag next to the chair and sat down, covering his face with his hands. He could have told the truth, made one phone call, and changed everything right away. But that wasn't the reason he was here. He needed to see it himself, to see what was happening in the place he once thought was safe. A soft knock broke the silence. His head shot up. Another knock, this time more careful. Keanu stood up and quickly walked to the door. He unlocked it. A young woman from the front desk stood there. She looked nervous, twisting her hands. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Keanu looked at her. She was young, maybe in her early 20s. Her makeup couldn't hide how tired she was. You don't have to say sorry, he said softly. She blinked. But I do. You don't understand what it's like working here. The things they make us do. The people we have to treat differently. Keanu leaned against the doorframe. Holloway. She swallowed and nodded. He controls everything here. He's not the owner, but his money makes the rules. When he comes, we can't give rooms to certain people. We have to say no just because of how someone looks or dresses. She took a shaky breath. I hate it. Keanu's chest felt tight. Then why do you stay? She gave a sad smile. Because people like me don't have a choice. He thought about that. She wasn't the bad guy. She was just another victim, just like the people who were turned away, treated as if they didn't matter. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated. Lena. He nodded. Lena, do you believe in second chances? She frowned a little. Yes. A strong, determined feeling rose in Keanu's chest. Good, he said quietly, because things are about to change. Lena looked confused, but Keanu had already made up his mind. Tomorrow the world would know what was happening inside Silver Haven. Tomorrow he wouldn't be just another guest. Tomorrow everyone will know the truth. That night Keanu hardly slept. He lay in the small hotel room, staring at the ceiling. His mind was racing. The weight of it all felt heavy. He had built Silver Haven to be different. It was supposed to be more than just a fancy hotel for rich people. But now it was full of unfair rules and controlled by greedy men. People were judged by their clothes and money, not by who they really were. He couldn't let it continue. The sun was just beginning to rise when Keanu got out of bed. He washed his face and looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes were tired, but his jaw was set with determination. He had fought many battles before, but this one was personal. A knock at the door. Keanu turned and opened it. Lena stood there, holding a tray with a hot cup of coffee. I thought you might need this, she said softly. He took the cup and nodded. Thanks. She shifted on her feet. I don't understand why you're still here, she said. Most people would have just left. Keanu gave her a small smile. Most people don't own this place. Lena's eyes widened. What? He took a sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through him. I own Silver Haven. She gasped. I built this place to be a safe space, Keanu said. His voice was quiet but firm. But last night I saw what it's become. And that's going to change. Lena stared at him, struggling to process what he had just said. Before she could respond, voices echoed in the hallway. Keanu looked past her. A group of rich-looking men walked toward the elevator, laughing loudly. Their suits were expensive, their confidence unshakable. Holloway. He walked like he owned everything. His suit was perfect, his hair slicked back. A woman clung to his arm, dressed in something so fancy it probably cost more than most people made in a year. Keanu watched as they walked by, completely ignoring him. But he wasn't invisible. Not anymore. He set his coffee down. "Lena," he said quietly. She looked at him. "Yes. I need you to do something for me." She nodded. "Anything." "I need to know everything," he said. "Every rule changes. Every guest who was turned away. Every person Holloway made you ignore." Lena hesitated for only a second. Then she straightened up, her eyes filled with determination. "I can do that. Meet me in the lobby in an hour." She turned to leave but then paused. "Keanu?" He raised an eyebrow. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Thank you." He gave her a small nod. "Not yet." Lena walked away and Keanu stepped back into his room. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through his contacts. For a long time he had avoided using his power. He had avoided calling for help. He didn't want to make a big scene. But this wasn't about him anymore. It was about the people who had been hurt. The ones who had been turned away. And today that ended. Keanu stood by the window watching the city wake up. Cars honked. People rushed to work. The world moved forward as if nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. And today it was going to be set right. His fingers hovered over his phone. Then he finally made the call. A rough voice answered. "Boss." "It's time, Ryan," Keanu said. Silence. Then a quiet chuckle. "I figured it'd come to this. I'll have the team there in an hour." Keanu hung up. Ryan was his right-hand man. The one who handled things when Keanu wasn't around. And today Keanu needed everything he had. An hour later, Keanu walked into the big fancy hotel called Silver Haven. Lena stood near the front desk. She looked a little scared, but she was strong. She had done what Keanu asked. She had gathered lists, names, and proof of all the unfair things that had happened because of Holloway. As soon as Keanu walked in, the workers in the hotel noticed him. People started whispering. Their eyes got big. The workers who had turned him away last night now realized who he was. Some looked sorry and some looked scared. But Keanu wasn't here to be angry at them. He was here for the truth. Holloway was near the bar, drinking a fancy glass of scotch. He laughed loudly, not knowing what was about to happen. Keanu walked right up to him. Holloway turned just as Keanu stopped in front of him. For a tiny moment, Holloway looked surprised. But then he smiled in a cold way. Well, Holloway said. "Mr. Reeves, I didn't think I'd see you here." Keanu looked right into his eyes. "That's funny," Keanu said. "Because this is my hotel." The whole room went quiet. The guests turned to watch. The workers held their breath. Holloway chuckled and swirled his drink. "Oh really?" he said. "Then why did my workers almost throw you out last night?" Keanu's jaw tightened. "Because you've been using my hotel like it's your own playground," he said. "You've been kicking people out just because of how they look. Changing rules to make things easier for yourself. Deciding who is good enough to be here." Holloway smirked. "It's just business, Reeves," he said. "Some people don't belong in places like this." Keanu's jaw clenched. He turned to the hotel workers and spoke loudly. "Raise your hand if you were ever forced to say no to a guest because of Holloway." At first no one moved. But then one by one hands started to go up. The receptionist, the Tommy, the cleaning staff, even the security guard. Holloway's smirk disappeared. Keanu stepped even closer. His voice was calm but strong. "This hotel was built for everyone. Not just rich people. Not just people you think are important. Everyone." He turned to look at the whole room. His voice got louder. "That changes today." Just then Ryan walked in with a team of lawyers. "I read through the contracts," Ryan said loud enough for Holloway to hear. "And starting right now, Mr. Reeves is fully in charge of the Silver Haven. Anyone who breaks the rules will be kicked out." He looked at Holloway. "That includes you." For the first time, Holloway looked truly angry. "You wouldn't dare," he said. Keanu met his gaze. "I would." A deep silence filled the room. Then, with a scowl, Holloway finished his drink and slammed the glass on the bar. He turned and stormed out the door. The doors closed behind him. For a moment, everything was still. Then a few people started clapping. Slowly, more and more people joined in. The hotel workers started smiling. The guests who had been watching whispered to each other, looking happy. Lena let out a deep breath. She hadn't realized she had been holding it. Keanu turned to her. "Are you ready to run this hotel the right way?" he asked. Lena's eyes widened. "Me?" Keanu nodded. "You saw what was wrong. You weren't afraid to speak up. That's the kind of leader this place needs." Tears filled Lena's eyes, but she smiled. "I won't let you down," she said. Keanu smiled back. "I know." As he walked toward the doors, he felt a sense of peace. For years, he had stayed away from his own success. He thought real kindness was helping quietly without people noticing. But tonight he learned something new. Sometimes kindness needs to be loud. Sometimes kindness needs to change the world. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.